This is Hunter Wade at the Athletes Lounge podcast, and I'm here with my guest,
My name is Coach Scaffield.
the so coach. You've done a lot of stuff in your basketball career. I guess we'll just start off hot. What's your most favorite thing you've gotten to do in your career?
I guess that's an easy one because for me, I've got a passport full of ink. And so for me to be an ambassador coming from the state of Indiana and traveling the globe, being a head coach and winning multiple championships. And I say we accumulated a near 780 win percentage. To experience the cultures, to experience different languages, to experience different currency, to experience different forms of government, different forms of religion. That's an education you can't get in the classroom. So for me, just to have been around the globe, coaching in Europe, the Middle East, Asia, South America, of course, all over North America for 14 seasons as a college coach, just to do something that you love. What better thing is that? And then to also dabble in the NBA with Coach Jerry Sloan and consult with him with the Utah Jazz. Having being with Steph Curry as a rookie with the Golden State Warriors right after he was drafted out of Davidson, and then also spending a summer with the Sac Kings. I'm probably one of the most blessed men that you have ever seen follically challenged walking around with a limp.
Well, what was your deal at the West Coast there? The West Coast was loving you.
I think just being around in the summer, because I would always come to the NBA summer leagues because I'm actually recruiting talent that was on the cusp of being on an NBA roster, and maybe it didn't quite work out and we could offer them guaranteed money. So for me, being in Salt Lake City for the Rocky Mountain Review, being in Las Vegas for the NBA Summer League, being at the Long Beach Summer League, I was there to watch talent to bring over to my clubs to benefit the local talent that we had, to enhance what we had so we can continue to put a winning product on the court. So for me, a lot of that NBA Summer League stuff during my time was out in the West. So for me, I come out here to Salt Lake City. I'm at the Rocky Mountain Review. I meet and fall in love with who Lynn became my wife. The West has been very good to me.
Yeah. So I'm just gonna start with saying on your resume that piqued my interest. Tell me about the NBA charity game during the lockout.
You
I
know what?
am so
That was a
curious.
that was a unique experience. That was in November. The lockout had already begun. Players kind of had an itch to want to get out and play, and we were able to create. A platform for these athletes to come to Salt Lake City. We played at the Salt Lake Community College, and we were able to raise money for a lot of the disabled youth in the area. So there were some kids with brittle bone disease and with other mental and physical handicaps. So Larry Fox, who did an outstanding job, that represented some great talent like Anthony Tolliver, who was good friends with Steph Curry. Jimmer Fredette was just signed with Sacramento at that time after he had an outstanding career at BYU. Jeremy Evans was with us, who just won the NBA slam dunk contest. Enes Kanter was with us also. But I had Corey Maggette. I had Chauncey Billups with us, who you know where he's at right now.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we had a great collection of talent for a meaningful cause. And it just happened to happen during that NBA lockout time where the players could go in and get some reps. And of course, we played against a group of guys that were the Utah Jazz at that time. So, I mean, Ronnie Price, Paul Millsap, just some great guys. And we entertained a sold out crowd and raised good money. But that was actually the second time that I was able to be around Steph Curry and coach him, because I was also with him his rookie year with the Golden State Warriors with another Indiana legend, Keith Smart, who sank that winning shot to beat Syracuse in '87.
The was Corey Maggette getting to the free throw line in the charity game?
Yes, he was. There weren't a lot of fouls called, but he was just one of those high risers that put on a 360 slam dunk exhibition for the crowd. So it was fun. Matter of fact, I think Steph Curry scored 42 in that game.
Which he then would do pretty much on a nightly basis, seemingly for a couple of years.
Yeah, so let me take credit for starting him off on his 40
Yeah.
point tangents.
I'm happy that you.
Don't believe that.
I'm happy you mentioned Anthony Tolliver because Anthony Tolliver, at least once or twice a year, would have a highlight, like would make Sports Center. He would have one block or one dunk where it would just be amazing. And I'm happy Anthony Tolliver should forever be remembered.
Well, you know what? He's a guy that was a Missouri Valley Conference guy, played at Creighton, but he was very serviceable because he was one of the first face-up fours who could step out and shoot the three with consistency. So, as an asset to an NBA franchise, you're always looking for shooters, and the fact that he had size and length to go with it, he could fill that void and be a serviceable talent on many NBA rosters, and he did that throughout his career.
Well, I was gonna say he wouldn't get burned when he got switched onto a guard automatically. He could
There
hold
you
his
go.
own. He was
Yeah,
kind of quick twitch, and he was long. So pretty much what they look for in fours, he was.
right. Yeah,
Yeah,
he had that versatility package where he could defend multiple positions, he could rebound, he could get out, run the floor. He would definitely space the floor in offense because he could catch and shoot, which created spacing to allow other athletes to be able to create off the dribble. So the fact that you use a term quick twitch, my man, you've got some dialogue and terminology right there. I love that. That's NBA coach talk right
that's
there.
that's Bill Simmons. That's the
There
the
you go.
well the actually Jeremy Evans was who went to Western Kentucky.
That's right.
The
That's right.
and he
He had some great years here at Utah. Coach Sloan, again, Evansville, Indiana guy,
yep,
Evansville Aces. Um, you know, he made rookies work for it. I mean, even Darren Williams, when he came in as a rookie, rookies weren't just put in. I mean, they had to earn their spot and earn their time. So for a guy like him to come out and play quality time, it always took a little bit of time and transition into and get them used to the physicality, get them used to the flow, get them used to the terminology because he had high expectations from the point guard position after having a John Stockton, who I don't know if that career record in assists will ever be touched, but he didn't miss many practices and he always won his sprints. So that's a high ceiling for anybody to be compared to.
those Jazz teams, and actually you mentioned someone else there, Paul Millsap. It's a perfect fit for Utah because he's everything
Hard
Utah would ever
hat,
want.
hard working, didn't say anything, came in, did his job. I mean, just worked hard day in and day out. And he was a Coach Sloan kind of guy. So there was no doubt that, he was a great fit in here. And, to have a family member who was, his agent, D'Angelo Simmons, they did a great job and was able to, find some quality money through him and actually had great longevity in his career as he moved into his twilight. Matter of fact, congratulations to him because he just got married recently.
The he was a big as a Nugget fan. I was very happy to have Paul Millsap, and then amazingly, when it seemed like maybe those undersized power forwards would get phased out of the game, he stuck around because he was so versatile.
That's right. That's right. You know what? He was undersized for a four, but I'm gonna tell you what, just his basketball IQ, the way he used his body, banged, create space. He could hit the mid-range jumper. He could defend multiple low post positions. Again, just great work ethic. So if there's players out there that are listening, know that you can make an NBA roster not by the amount of points that you score, but to be an asset and be a defender and be able to guard multiple positions and do the dirty work. Set those hard screens. Keep the offensive rebound and tap alive. Dive on the floor for the loose balls. Take charges. He did all those things and never complained about it because he was a star in his role.
Well, and he might be off of Nikola Jokic. He's a top 5 cutter to ever play off you. Aaron Gordon's number 1. Aaron Gordon's the undisputed best cutter because he's just so athletic. And it's like Gary Harris, Millsap, and then Jeremy Grant are like the best people just knowing where to find where to place themselves and where to place their hands to catch stuff in really tight windows. And then
That's right.
and then
And
Shaquille Harrison's cameo in Denver. Shaquille Harrison's really got that. I like
there you
Shaquille
go.
Harrison.
But the fact that Jokic has the ability to pass the way he does, to me, he reminds me of a young Arvydas Sabonis. Had he come to the NBA earlier in his career and not in his mid-30s, that's what I envision Sabonis being like. But I'm going to tell you what, he's got that, you think he's not athletic, but yet he still creates space, gets off his shot. You saw him knock down those shots with a step back leaning fadeaway from three over AD and LeBron to close out those series. To me, how did he not get MVP of the league when it just like being a smaller media market, he didn't get the attention until the playoffs, but he showed his value with he and Jamal Murray in those playoffs. That was just phenomenal. And as a coach and a purist, that's fun to watch because that's teachable basketball at every level.
Yeah, winning the 2 straight hurt him too, and then but, Denver's better than Philly all year, and I thought Harden this year is better than anyone Denver had in the regular season. I thought because Harden had a really underrated regular season.
Yeah, that's arguable, but still, what Jokic did during the regular
Yeah.
season, even when other players were out, he was consistent the entire season, getting multiple triple doubles. And then as Murray was getting his legs underneath him, getting back their rhythm, you had Porter that was in there. You had Gordon. I mean, again, they had a nice mix, and I like their bench depth because Coach Malone did a great job of utilizing that talent and their depth, and that depth definitely showed deeper in those playoff runs.
Well, thank goodness for Jeff Green for being ageless.
Wow. There you go. There you go. Hey, that's a veteran taking care of his body and knowing when his name was called that he was going to produce. Because a lot of times, he sits on the bench for 36 minutes. All of a sudden, he gets his name called. Then he goes out there and hits big shots, makes good passes, keeps plays alive. That's a serviceable veteran who does a heck of a job, whatever roster he's on.
And he's also someone I would classify as quick twitch, because some guys have like a higher ceiling quarter to quarter, and some like Tayshaun Prince has like a higher ceiling quarter to quarter than some other guys. Jeff Green's kind of like that, but I think a lot of people wish he was a little bit more consistent. Sometimes he has games where he just doesn't miss.
Yeah,
just,
right. True,
which,
true.
And
hey, you give him that half second for that release, that shot's up and it's in.
And then he's deadly off the dribble. He forgets he's 37, so he decides to try to poster people.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. But again, that takes a lot of reps, and that's doing a lot of work on your own free time to get those reps in, to keep your legs, to keep that footwork, keep that release. I mean, he stays sharp. And again, if other players are out there watching and listening, watch players like that, because again, you can pick up so much, but it's all the hours that's unseen. Like the Kobe Bryant's with that Mamba mentality where he'd work for 3.5 hours just on a swing through cut, to try to get the defense to collapse on a pick and roll so that way he could dump it off to Pau Gasol. Things like that are unseen, and hours of dripping sweat when there's no popcorn popping, shoes aren't squeaking, it's just you in the gym at 4:30 in the morning. That's a Jeff Green.
I was going to ask here, son, on your you're at the Sac Kings. Whiteside would have overlapped there, right?
Yes, he spent some time in Lebanon, and then of course he was with the Miami Heat for a short time. But again, here was a guy that was doing some things that some general managers may have thought was questionable with his attitude, with his behavior. He goes overseas, he gets polished, he gets rep, he's putting up good numbers, and then he comes right back in and does a good job for a few years.
Like the 35 pounds helped too.
That's exactly right.
He was stronger when he came back.
That's right. That's right.
And he was insane athleticism for his size.
Yep. Yeah, he had that long wingspan that covered up a lot of space with that height. So those things help, especially when a player learns to be able to use his body, defend the post, but yet also learn how to come out and change and create, change shots so you can get a rebound and get a break going. He learned those angles, and when he got those angles and his footwork down, his market value increased.
So let's see, you're with the Warriors, you're with the Jazz, you're with the Kings for these summer leagues. So you said you kind of a recruit. So I'm just going to I can't even think of an example. If you have some like the 12th guy in the summer league roster, are you kind of like recruiting him? Like, you might get cut here, but we'd love to have you, wherever you are.
It was more about having fruitful relationships with the general managers and the player personnel, because that way we could get an honest assessment where someone was going to be, and then having those conversations with the agent to say, okay, my information coming to me is we're looking at this. Here's what we're able to offer him. Do you want to, try to go in to the NBA season and get invited into a camp and have no guaranteed money? Or would you like to have a 10-month guaranteed contract where you're going to make six figures and your amenities are covered for you? So again, it was having those conversations, but it was high level guys. Let me give you an example. Julius Nwasu, who was
Okay.
the Nigerian national team captain, who spent time with the San Antonio Spurs. He comes over, and if you ever saw his wall in his home, he has so many championships because he won multiple championships around the globe. He played for me in the CBA here in the United States, but helped us win a championship in Beirut, Lebanon. So it was guys like him who were very good, could play in the NBA, but chose to get more money overseas for that guaranteed money. But just great people who were also great people on the bench and great people in the locker room to help the younger local talent to learn their craft and increase their market value. It was guys like him, guys like an Ace Custis from a Virginia Tech who played with the Dallas Mavericks, also comes over, plays with us, in Beirut, Lebanon, helps us win those championships. So guys like a Jamie Watson, a guy like Stephen Howard, who played with the Utah Jazz, came over and played in a tournament in Dubai with us to help us win multiple games. So it's those guys that are right on that NBA cusp, but maybe maybe they wanted to make some money in between their seasons where they didn't have, a buyout clause or something like that in their contract that could come over and play great minutes for us.
Well, the best, however, amount of players in the league aren't always the true best players in the league. It's more who a team wants to have fit. Because like Carmelo Anthony last year should have been in the league, pure talent wise, and individual ability, but for whatever reason,
Yeah.
six,
A
16.
lot of it has to do with chemistry. What is the talent that you have, and why are you being brought in to fill a certain role or a certain need? For me, I knew my local talent very well in all the countries that I coached in, but I knew where our deficiencies were. And if I knew of a high level player, whether he played high level European ball or if he played, NBA, 13th, 14th, 15th man on a roster. Hey, if I'm aware with him and I already have a relationship with him and I have a good relationship with his agent, hey, let's make a contact and find out if there's any interest and can we make it happen for him to come over for a handful of months, make good money, get some win bonuses, and yet build up a nest egg in case he wanted to come back and make another run, into vet camp the next year. That's kind of how those things kind of manifested themselves and actually was quite fruitful for us to help us win. Because I'm gonna tell you what, I don't care what a coach tells you, great players make great coaches out of us in a hurry. It's just getting buy-in from everybody to understand, accept their roles, and play their role. And that's what our job is as coaches. I mean, we're constantly recruiting, we're constantly developing talent, we're constantly trying to help people with their market value, we're constantly watching and scouting other players to see who can come in to fit your roster. So for us, it's 12 months a year, 24/7. It never stops and it never dies because you're always looking. Because what if you have an injury? If you have an injury, you may have to fill a roster spot in a hurry. And yet, can the guys on your roster with the depth that you have, how quickly can you expedite to get the visa that you need for travel? There's a lot of logistical things that go into that, but you always had to be proactive and be ready and let people know, hey, this could happen. And if it does happen, what do we have to do to buy you out from your current league? And can your agent help us with that process to expedite it? Make sure you can get on a plane that night so we can pick you up here that next morning, get them acclimated, get their bodies moving, because you also don't want a player to come flying in, have a 12-hour flight, land, and try to jump right onto a basketball court where there's going to be an injury because he sat dormant and he had no circulation for a while. You had to keep hydrating. So there's a lot of things that go into it with diet, nutrition, recovery. Again, it's all about the details for us, professional coaches.
So you could tell that other leagues work a lot differently than the NBA because
Yeah,
the guys get bought out, guys move teams more frequently if they want to.
that's right.
The I was gonna say Matthew Dellavedova is a recent example where he was out of the league, he came back into the league, And I don't know if he just didn't enjoy it the second stint over here and when he was in Sacramento or what, but he pretty much immediately, once they were eliminated from the playoffs this year, signed back in Australia.
That's exactly right. Because there again, there's that guaranteed money. He was able to come in, maybe fill a void just in case a point guard had an injury, and he could step up and play that. And then, hey, that contract's over. There's no buyout clauses. He goes back immediately. That's already taken care of through the contracts through their agent. So if if the agent was misled in any way, you burn that bridge, you're never going to get that quality of player again. So again, being forthright, being proactive, being aggressive, being brutally honest with your situation and your needs. You don't want that to be a disconnect in communication with all those details that truly matter when you're talking about someone's, income and market ability and market value.
Dellavedova, who was actually shockingly cut from Australia this year which that would have been hard to believe 3 years ago. That would have which I guess sometimes that just happens, but I guess Giddy's pretty much their point guard now. So
right. And again, I'm sure there was some political things and things going on behind the scenes that may have led to those decisions. But again, those are things that we don't. I mean, I'm not privy of, and I can't speak on. But I'm sure there was some sort of extenuating circumstance that caused that decision to be put in play.
Yeah, that was just one of those things where usually don't bat an eye at some of those World Cup cuts, but you don't expect Dellavedova to get cut. Just because the NBA guys tend to just have a root in there anyway.
Right. I mean, you look at your Dante Exums, you look at your Dellavedovas, you look at your Joe Ingles, guys that have played in the NBA for many years and that go over play with the Boomers and yet keep them competitive because those guys have been a core for that national team for many years. So that's how those things continue to go, and then you develop your program through your junior systems.
Yeah, they got Patty Mills will never leave that team.
That's exactly right. He's doing a great job right now because look, again, he learned under Pop. And so he's learned how to be a pro and he learns how to, be a vocal leader on the court. He's learned how to direct traffic on the court, which again makes him a valuable asset, especially when you have those serviceable wings who can put it on the floor, score, shoot it, keep the spacing, give your bigs, Baines, room to run and bang and do what they do in there on the block. So every team's going to have their own unique assets, and it's up to us coaches to put them in a position to be successful and create offenses to allow them to showcase their skills.
It's hard to believe that they'd still be this competitive in a post-Bogut world.
There you go.
Yeah.
Well, he was one of those guys that was a pioneer who came over here, played at the University of Utah, drafted #1. So you see the precedence that he set and set the ceiling high for that younger generation to come up and follow. I mean, Luke Longley's and everybody else.
Imagine if Bogut would have fell to Utah in that 2005 draft. That would have been
wow.
That would have been a science experiment.
There you go.
They would actually. They probably would have loved that. They would have probably taken him instantly. That's good hometown marketability.
There you go.
So you worked with who are some of the other Warriors on that summer league team? I'm trying to think about it. Because like Monte Ellis isn't showing up for summer league by that point, right?
No, but I'll tell you a great story that came out of there. Undrafted out of Georgia Tech, Anthony Morrow was on that summer league roster. I was there the afternoon where during the practice, I mean, he knocked down like 13 threes in a row. And Coach Don Nelson was sitting right there. I'm 2 chairs down from him. Coach Keith Smart comes off the floor. Coach Nelson looks right at Anthony Morrow and says, "Young man, you've got a shot to make this team." And immediately the body language changed, the confidence changed, the look in his eye changed, the pep in his step changed. We go out the next game and he scores like 43. And it was just like he relaxed. He'd worked so hard for that moment. And then all of a sudden, he heard what he needed to hear. Coach Nelson installed that confidence in him, undrafted. Then you see how many teams he ended up, playing with after that. But it was that Golden State Warriors because it was also Anthony Randolph, the lefty from LSU,
Yes.
who set the NBA scoring record the night before with 40 some points. And then Anthony Morrow breaks it right after that, just a couple of games later. And yet Steph Curry was, getting 20, but yet 9 assists. And yeah, he was getting a few turnovers because he was getting a feel for the game. But that was just a fun NBA Summer League team that ended up winning the Summer League that year. So blessed to be around that, see the development. But the thing that was neat about Steph Curry, yeah, he was drafted, but yet there was so much cynicism and there was so much white noise. He's not a true point guard. He's not a good enough ball handler. Who's he going to guard at the 2 position? He never listened to any of that all the reporters and all the scouts were talking about. And he stayed focused. He stayed locked in. He was working on that famous, pregame ball handling routine that you see now. He blocked out the white noise. He worked on his release. Now you see him releasing it, turning, running the other way because of hours of repetition, hours of just shooting, hours of outworking and out preparing everybody else. And now he has set the NBA scoring mark for 3-pointers made. And the fact that he was able to block out all that negativity, thank goodness he had a great support system around him, having a father that played in the NBA and a mother that was also a college athlete who, said, hey, just stay focused, keep working, don't listen to it, play your game. It was great to see the maturation process unfold right in front of your eyes. It's like being out in the desert and pouring a glass of water over a rose and watching the rose just bloom.
Anthony Morrow had a Golden State's single season 3-point record for like 2 years before Steph started
That's
launching
exactly right.
in the
That's
same
exactly right.
neighborhood.
And here's a story behind the scenes. When Steph Curry was in high school, Anthony Morrow was in high school just outside of Charlotte. They battled each other and they knew each other. Yet Steph signs with Davidson. His career takes one trajectory. Anthony Morrow goes with Georgia Tech. Steph Curry gets drafted high. Anthony Morrow comes in undrafted, and yet look what Anthony Morrow did, and still what he does now, because now he's working with youth and helping players develop their games now. So great Anthony Morrow story there. I'm a
Yeah.
fan.
Yeah, I like Anthony Morrow. Well, so you were all those summer leagues. Is it apparent who's has the inside track to the roster, like when you show up, and then maybe 1 or 2 spots are open?
No. It's very competitive. And I think that's what makes the NBA Summer League so fun, because it's wide open. There are multiple spots, and that's a chance for you to get invited into rookie camp. It's a chance for you to get invited to the next stage, which is going to be an NBA veterans camp. And again, your market value is going to go up the longer you stick around those teams, which means if you don't make it, now your market value goes up. So instead of making $60,000 a year, you go in, have a great camp, you showcase in 2 or 3 of the games down in Vegas, a good ability. Next thing you know, you go from a $60,000 a year player up to, $160,000 a year player. So yeah, those games, even though it's kind of hard to watch because a lot of players are playing a little bit out of control, there's not great decisions being made, you don't have a lot of time for great chemistry, but yet the cream kind of rises to the top, and you can see who is serviceable enough to be invited in to fulfill a roster spot.
And summer leagues now kind of taking a life of its own, even more so than it had
That's right.
before. And
well, I think the reason is because everybody has seen the value within it. Because some players come in undrafted, and they may be, let's say there's a player playing with the Chicago Bulls team, and maybe he goes out there and he scores 21 points. Well, what happens now? You see a Javon Liberty, right? That played at DePaul, that was basically undrafted. He's with the Chicago Bulls summer league team, but yet he signs a contract with the Toronto Raptors because it allowed him to showcase the team in front of other scouts. And they're like, hey, we need a scorer and somebody who could create off the dribble. Boom, he goes in this year, and now he's with a contract with the Toronto Raptors.
And I think I think summer league's proven, and there's tons of guys that make opening day rosters when undrafted and make rosters their rookie year.
And to be honest with you, for some, being undrafted actually, they can come in with a higher contract, because think about it, your lottery picks, those contracts are already set through the collective bargaining agreement. So if a guy comes in the second round or undrafted, they can actually come in and demand more money than a guy who was drafted high and maybe not work out. So again, a lot of that, you know, there's a lot of pressure on your evaluation, on your interviewing process. Is it the right guy? I mean, we've seen NBA busts, guys that were drafted at a high level that just didn't pan out for whatever reason. But yet you get a guy who's undrafted and hungry and eager to prove himself. Man, he comes in there and does a great job, and he competes for it and earns that roster spot.
So we're talking about Anthony Morrow. Were there in your summer league stints, was there anyone else that had a similar kind of undrafted, low second round pick rise or
There's a lot of guys that I've been around that were able to persevere and gain roster spots. The list is long. It's a great question. There's a lot of guys out there that would utilize the NBA Summer League just to up their market value because they knew they wanted to go overseas. I mean, look at Jimmer Fredette, highly regarded, had an unbelievable career at BYU, all-time leading scorer. The last few years after he left Sacramento, I mean, he's got great contracts playing over in the CBA in China, which really worked out for him. He has a family, he's able to support his family, and he was able to make much more money in China than what he would have had he signed with the Phoenix Suns again. So, there's stories like that as well, to where, sometimes all that glitters is not gold. And if there's a chance to make more money in some overseas markets, I mean, there's some countries out there that will pay very, very well. So, you may not have the glitz and the glamour and the fame, but yet what's the value that you put on that as a player? Because maybe you give up some of the glitz and the glamour, but yet you can still have a large social media following and still have support and still make, hundreds of thousands of dollars per season and still live quite comfortably.
the you worked at Thomas Robinson, right?
T. Rob was with Sacramento when I was with the Kings. Isaiah Thomas was out there, and
Yep.
I think that was something that helped my adopted son Brandon. He was with me around the Golden State Warriors. He was able to see a Steph Curry. He was able to watch Isaiah Thomas, come in and just work extremely hard and pick up the ball handling and the ball mastery type thing. So, I mean, there's a long list of players that goes on that we were able to watch. I mean, even Klay Thompson going in from Washington State, being a part of Golden State and knocking down shots. I can remember looking at a few friends with me, and I was like, man, that release is pure. So again, now they're the Splash Brothers, and you've seen what's happening. Draymond Green coming in from Michigan State. So the list goes on, and it's more than just Golden State. It's all those NBA franchises that have guys that come up who are pleasant surprises that, hey, for some reason or another, they just weren't very high, through the scouts, but yet they went somewhere, proved themselves, and then, look what happens.
This is a question I have. So when you have someone who's in Sacramento it'd be Boogie Cousins, and in Golden State it would be David Lee, for example. When a guy's
Yep. From
established,
Florida.
they're not playing in summer league, but do they hang around summer league at all?
They do. They're there, and they're actually going through practices. They're meeting with the young rookies. They're kind of taking them under their wing. They're doing individual workouts. They'll get in some reps, when the team's doing some practices. So yeah, I mean, like when you see all those NBA guys along the sidelines in the front row watching the summer leagues, they're there because maybe they're there with Team USA, but yet they're supporting their franchises. They're around these young rookies who have been drafted. They're around some of the G League players who are being invited to the NBA Summer League. They're kind of building relationships. They're getting to know them. They're picking, those veterans' minds. And to me, I think it's an asset when you're veterans are there in support of your NBA summer leagues. I mean, look at your Boston Celtics when you have a Jaylen Brown sitting there watching these young kids being drafted and kind of being a mentor to those guys. At some point, someone had to take Jaylen Brown under his wing, and now Jaylen Brown's able to do the same thing. Kobe Bryant did that for our wing that's out there with Tatum, and now look what Tatum's doing. So Tatum now is going to pass that torch and help younger players just like a Kobe Bryant did for him.
The so formulate my next question here. So there's a hierarchy of foreign leagues in a way, right?
There
What
is,
what
and
what what
that's based on sponsorship and money and contracts that they can offer if they're able to sustain and able to play, continue
yeah,
to pay the players throughout the year. So I mean, Russia, has a great league.
yeah,
Turkey has a phenomenal league. Spain has a phenomenal league. Greece pre-pandemic
yeah.
was much better, but they lost some sponsorship, and the same for Italy. So now you have a few teams in Serie A that have great money, but yet maybe it's only 4 or 5 teams, and then there's a big drop off between the top 4 or 5 teams to the teams that are 8, 9, 10, 11, and that
And
could be
then
sponsorship based.
and then the Euro League, for people that understand, it's pretty much a super league, right?
It is. It is. I mean, a lot of those teams are going to qualify because they are the National League champions. So they'll have rosters where maybe there's a federation rule where only maybe 2 American players can play during the league season, but yet maybe they've qualified and they're playing in the Euro Cup, so they're able to have 5 Americans on the team, and they'll choose 4 of those players to play during those Euro Cup games. So maybe there's 7 players that they're playing paying professionally, but yet only certain of them are selected for those Euro Cup games, which is higher exposure. Which everybody talks about Luka Doncic. Man, what a surprise! Come on, he was the Euro League Finals MVP at age 18. So when people say they're surprised to see him do it in the NBA, well, he did it since he was 15 years old in Slovenia, and then with his Euro Cup team. So for me, those things don't surprise me. I remember when Manu Ginobili, came over, going from Argentina to Italy, and then yet, people were asking me, "What do you think of him?" I'm like, extremely explosive, quick second leap, great Euro step, that you see everybody doing now. But we had the same agent from Inter Performances, which was, may he rest in peace, Luciano Capicchione, and now his son Manny Capicchione is now representing those guys. But I mean, they represented Arvydas Sabonis. They had Peja Stojakovic, Zildrunas Ilgauskas. They had a lot of those first European players that came over that first signed NBA contracts.
Was Big Z, was he 7'3"?
Yeah, he's a big boy. He's a big boy.
The well the
Ilgauskas, you betcha.
it's such a great name.
Oh
It's
man, that name's worth millions right there.
yeah, the so yeah, I was wondering 'cause, like the Euro League's a super league, and it's an arms race pretty much for like the actual it's just
Yeah, I mean, you got Cheska. I can remember coaching in Germany when Alba Berlin was one of the top 4 teams. Svetoslav Pecic was the head coach of Alba Berlin, who was the Serbian national team coach, and yet they had like a Wendell Alexis, on that team, and just great teams, great players, competitive, and they took us lightly because I came in, replaced a Yugoslavian coach midseason, and that Wendell Alexis Alba Berlin team only beat us by 4. So we were able to be competitive and play against some big hitters, and that's kind of what helped me get introduced to Luciano Capicchione. He's like, hey, let's put a little muscle behind the hustle and let's build some awareness to your brand. And then next thing you know, I'm signing nice contracts around the globe.
would you would you say the non-Chinese Asian leagues are growing? Like
Yes.
Taiwan and Japan and
Of course, because there's that trickle down effect. There's only so many roster spots that can be taken. So for years, it was always China and Korea. Korea had good money
yeah.
that would pay the players very well. But yet now you see even the smaller countries like a Vietnam. You see teams like that where market values were not so good post pandemic, and they couldn't get the higher salaries that they could in other countries. So there's only so many roster spots. So you see quality talent playing in lower level leagues right now because at least they're still making money, being paid professionally. Their housing is taken care of, room and board is taken care of, their travel is taken care of. A lot of times, depending on what their salary is, they're not double taxed. Like when I coached in Saudi Arabia, we had a tariff that I couldn't be taxed on the money that I made coaching in Saudi Arabia, which was a great asset for me to be able to sign there.
So what did you think about the Dwight Howard to Taiwan then?
Wasn't surprised. Wasn't surprised. It allowed him to play. It allowed him to continue to have fun. He was putting up good numbers. He's over there making commercials. I actually know the company that he works with that helped him sign that contract, that helped him with his marketing contract, and actually got him a TV show over there. So why not? You have the market value. Go over there, and then I know the American player, Micah Ferbra, who played with him, who ended up being an all-star in that Taiwanese league, and yet he's making a great deal of money. Then he goes back in the summer, runs his camps in Italy, and then comes back the next year, signs a good contract, continues to provide for his family. I love the opportunities.
Yeah, and I thought Dwight could still be in the league last year and as like
Without a doubt.
a big, and that's kind of like one of the Whiteside things where it's like, well, five teams are rebuilding, and you're
Right.
just a victim of five teams rebuilding and not trying to compete.
Well, let's be honest. The NBA is a copycat league. And now all of a sudden you see the Denver Nuggets winning with a quality 7-footer who can do multiple things. Now other teams are going to need quality 7-footers who can defend all the things that he can do. So you may see a Dwight Howard come back and sign a good contract because, again, now you're going to need someone to kind of at least not stop him, but neutralize him and make him work harder. So don't be surprised if you don't see a few more bigger 7-footers who are going to come back and now get some contracts who didn't before.
There's a random group of people who I've seen guard Joker well. It was Marc Gasol, Zaza, Alex Lynn, and who's the fourth? Derek Favors are four of the only people, and maybe AD's fifth, but AD is just a different animal than those four. Those are like some of the only people. Well, Gasol was probably about that level, but
And think of that list that you just mentioned. How many of those guys are European guys that understand that high cerebral game to where maybe take him and take away his go-to move to make him rely on his counter move, which may he still have proficiency, but just a little bit less proficiency. Make him score somewhere where he's less comfortable.
Well,
And that high IQ comes from those European leagues.
Well, it was Zaza's last year in the league where he's barely playing. He's on the Pistons. That one Blake Griffin Drummond year where they were kind of a solid
There you
team with
go.
Reggie Jackson. And Zaza just went fit, just hit him, just
Yeah.
hitting him.
Bang. Just
Right.
was just a banger. That's right. Kept the contact. He's one of those guys that we call an 8-eye guy. You need at least 8 eyes, 4 heads watching him to close gaps. And when Zaza's out there, now you've made him maybe a 4-eye guy because now you've botted him full court. You're taking away from him getting to the spots where he wanted to go, and that was a pretty good tactic for him at that time.
And then Alex Lynn just has so much beef to him that he's really strong that the
And length. He's wiry.
length and I mean he when he is still playing adequate enough minutes to actually for these types of numbers to count, he blocked a lot of shots. And he was and his contested, his analytics for contests and that were always good. So I've always liked Alex Lynn's game actually. I think
No, I like the fact that you've done your due diligence, you've done your research. This is a fun conversation for me because I know you get it and you understand it.
what are your thoughts on Dragan Bender? Because I really like Dragon's game, and I don't know if he just ended up in a bad situation or
Right. I don't know enough about him to really speak on it. Do I think he's got some talent? 100%. Do I think maybe it just may have been the wrong fit for him and his style of play? Could be. And that I would lean towards that way.
Yeah, well, it's kind of like Amari Hazonia, different player completely. But some of those European guys, because they're coming to such a new situation, I think they need to hit the ground running for their confidence to get under them. Because at least while they adapt to life over here, at least the basketball part's going great.
Right.
But I think for some of those guys, and I think Hazonia could have been really good. And I think Hazonia would have been better in an era before where 3-point numbers dominated it because he had such a good mid-range game.
The thing is, these guys are human. And even though they're great athletes, their egos and their confidence is very fragile. And if you have to make an adjustment to the speed and the physicality and the athleticism, you'll see quickly some of that confidence wane rapidly. So as a coach, what can we do to keep his confidence up as he's learning the transition into this game? And if you're able to, put player development people around him to keep their focus on the things that they do well instead of them thinking about all the things that it's making the game too fast for them, the greats have a great way of slowing the game down and getting that transition to where a Luka Doncic could come over and just play his game and, pass the ball, see the floor, high IQ, pocket passes, hitting those windows, hitting those gaps, learning, the nuances and the angles. Those things are important for those guys, especially when that speed and athleticism can be quite intimidating for a guy coming over for the first time.
We were talking about the EuroLeague earlier, and there's been some guys. Sometimes NBA guys go over there and it just doesn't work. Like Wesley Johnson and Moutier were both kind of recent examples. Do you think it's because limited games means limited amounts of you can't take possessions off in EuroLeague just because there's not as many games? The spacing's tighter, and teams will literally just leave you if you can't shoot.
Right. Well, and again, your weaknesses are going to get exposed quickly over there because everybody is very smart basketball wise. And if you go over there thinking, hey, I'm an NBA guy, this is not important to me, you're going to get exposed very quickly because maybe you didn't have the right mindset and the right attitude going in there where you thought, well, this is just going to be easy. Then you get over there and all of a sudden now you're a step behind. Now you've lost that confidence. Now you've got a bad attitude. Now you don't even want to be there. Next thing you know, now you've got a reputation and now you're going to be blacklisted getting back into the NBA because you don't have the right mindset and you don't have the right attitude. Because if an NBA franchise is going to invest in you as an asset, you have to show you're going to be an asset. What are you going to bring to that team?
Yeah, and I think Kemba Walker's almost made himself public reminders that he's going to play good this year. He's been very vocal about his desire to want to play good in the EuroLeague, and he's actually been pretty candid about he doesn't even know if he'll make it back to the NBA, and that's just not important to him at this point.
Talk about a star who had some good years, had played great with Kevin. Look what Stephon Marbury did in China for years. He went over there and actually created his own shoe and sold it at a low price. And man, he was the king over there for years and won a championship. And now he's a head coach in China, where he's created a life for himself. Now it's not the NBA life, but yet he's still doing quite well. And that's again is a big time name who was very highly thought of and did some great things in the NBA. And for whatever reason, business of the NBA just got in the way where it's just like, I don't want to deal with it anymore. Let's see if we can create something. And then he got love and support from billions of fans in China. And he's had and he finished out his career well as a player, now coaching over there. He's a legend.
That's our third Georgia Tech reference in this
How crazy is that? I used to work camps at Georgia Tech with Bobby Crimmins for years. So there you go.
Really? Well, Georgia Tech's had some players, and he coached some players there.
Let me give you another Georgia Tech. How he played at Shawan Junior College, and Freddie Vincent, who's now an assistant coach with the New Orleans Pelicans. He and I are great friends.
The Georgia Tech, which has produced a lot of guards, because I'm thinking of Price and Kenny Anderson, and then Marbury.
3D.
But because of so you coached in like South America, right?
I did. I spent time in Puerto Rico. I coached Carlos Arroyo when he was only 17 years old before he ever came to Florida International, before he ever got into the NBA. And then you saw what he did to the USA, lifting that jersey up with Puerto Rico beating USA in the World Championship. So I had Carlos when he was only 17. And then I want to say 9 years ago, I was down in Venezuela with the Guaros de Lara. And man, when you talk about fun, that guy, the owner there, Jorge, he's just like Mark Cuban, and man, was he fun to work for.
So I guess because you've been all these places, had there been any NBA guys have been on your rosters in these?
Of course, I had a Stephen Howard, Julius Nwasu, Jamie Watson. Again, the list is long. I'm thinking about God Shamgod. I'm thinking about,
no way.
Yeah, God Shamgod over in Saudi Arabia. We helped get him over there. But yet then you look at a Nate Robinson who came in, Marcus Fizer, with Guados de Lara. And yet Devin Green, who was Kobe Bryant's backup after he scored 81 points against the Raptors, Devin Green was on that team. I brought Devin Green over with me to China and made a great run, and then also got him down there with Guados de Lara in Venezuela. So again, yeah, highly serviceable NBA guys who I was blessed to be around and coach. And then I think of all the national team captains. I think of Jack Michael Martinez, who with the Dominican Republic, who was a great player, great rebounder. I think of Julius Nwasu, who was the captain. I think of Fadi Khatib, who was the captain of the Lebanese national team. I think of Carlos Arroyo, with Puerto Rico's national team. The list goes on and on. I've been blessed to have been around some great talent, that just guys who worked extremely hard and had great careers, not only for the NBA, but also to represent their national teams in their country.
So I don't know if this is even a thing, but I'm going to use someone. You brought up Pfizer, Iowa State guy. The I'm going to use some. So say I'm just going to use Solomon Hill as an example, right? Okay, so Solomon Hill tears his calf last year, and it's kind of evident at that point. Well, he might not get brought in again, right? You kind of sometimes like when someone gets hurt, they're not getting brought in. So would that be like you as a coach or management for the team you're working for reaches out to him to try to get him over? And is it like how does that process go? Is it kind of like, look, you're not going to get an NBA job, another NBA opportunity without at least proving yourself again? Or how does that type
I
of thing
think it's
go?
more getting them to realize that the NBA don't want to invest in it because it could be a liability because of where you're at physically. Let's get you over here and prove, and let's build you up progressively, and not just throw you into the deep end and let you sink or swim. Let's build you up. Let's develop you. Let's market you and remarket you to show them that you may have a future once you show that you can play a couple years injury free and yet still be productive on the court. And let's see what can happen for you in a few years. But getting the agent to buy in and understand that again, there's a lot of details that can go into that, but yet also providing a plan of action and having a goal, saying, okay, it's our goal to get you to this level. So maybe if you come over and play with us for a year, then we send you back to the NBA Summer League, let them reassess you, bring you back for that second season, and let's see where that market value goes.
So, and that wasn't any shade attempted on Solomon Hill. I like Solomon Hill's
Oh, no,
game.
no, no.
I was just coming up with someone because sometimes you just know, like when Kaminsky got hurt this year, you're like, or I guess a couple of years ago, and you're like, okay, I don't know if he ever gets a rotation spot again.
Right.
It's just, oh, he broke his ankle.
Right.
He broke his
Yeah,
ankle in like the second hottest streak he had in his career.
Right. Then it's a matter of assessing, okay, what is it that Frank wants? What is he wanting to do? Is he maybe wanting to transition earlier into a front office position? Is he wanting to transition into being a scout? Or does he want to, leave basketball all? Or does he still have that burning desire in his gut to show that he wants to showcase himself to get back into the league? So again, let's ask those key specific questions to him, so that way we can put him on a roadmap and give him a pathway to a fruitful career, to where maybe he can get back and have consideration to be back on an NBA roster. Where is he at mentally? Where is he at spiritually? And what is it that he wants at this point in his career once he's already proven himself?
Has there ever been discussions that you know of where you're going to talk to a guy and maybe he's 34, 35, 36, and like he kind of gets far along and then it's just kind of like, I'm done?
Yes. Yeah.
Well,
Well, I've had discussions with players to try to find out where they're at. What is their financial situation? How is their family doing? Are they in any kind of debt? Is there something that we can help them with a financial package to maybe get out of a financial hole? And then maybe he wants to invest in other things outside of basketball. Again, those are those conversations that you need to have, but yet you have to have that trust and that network and that credibility with the agent and the players, for them to know that, there's credibility and substance behind what this guy is offering. Because if you're just some young kid out there trying to, pave your way, and you don't have that credibility behind you, those conversations will never get started.
yeah, I was just thinking, like, if someone like, throwing a name, if an NBA team doesn't want George Hill this year, it would be perfectly reasonable if someone offered him a contract in like China and he just said, "Nah, I'm fine." It's
Right,
like,
because maybe because he dabbled into broadcast a little bit,
yeah,
so maybe you can just go ahead and segue into a broadcasting career, and then maybe work for a couple of local networks, maybe work for the San Antonio Spurs where he had success. Let them groom him, let him climb the ladder, and let's see where it goes, broadcast wise.
and
So again, there's a lot of tangibles and uncontrollables unless you have those specific conversations with them and their agent to find out what is it that you want, what is it that you're looking for, what do you need, and what do you like?
were you
Well,
ever
how can we?
were you ever around Bobby Brown?
No,
Because that dude, because that guy, his like teams played for, list, it's just phenomenal. It's like
right,
it's
right,
like
right.
he just well some guys,
Yep. Don't I don't know him personally.
some guys grinded out for like 17 years. That's impressive. It's,
Isn't it though? Yeah. I mean, look at your Jamal Crawfords. Look at these guys that have been in it for years and yet still love it. And I mean, look at Vince Carter for years. Look what he did and was still able to play, deep into his career. So you got to respect that. That's a lot of hard work.
Vince seemed like he had 1 or 2 more years left in him.
Good enough.
I
Yeah, he
mean,
still had a little bit of bounce to him, and he was developing that jumper and that 3-point game.
his jumper, he was a better defender when he was 36 than he was when he was 20.
Yeah, because then he didn't have to rely just on his athleticism. He had to actually bang and body and cut people off, and he learned how to do that.
Yeah, and he got a lot of heavy, and he put on weight, which
Yeah, yeah.
every tweener wing had to put on weight at some point.
There you go.
Everyone needs to have a Jay Crowder body type now to play the four.
There you
Pretty much.
go. There you go.
The so I guess like when you I guess we get Nate Robinson. Nate Robinson is a pretty, he's a colorful guy.
Great personality.
He's Nate Robinson.
That's right. That's exactly right.
The
Another NBA champ, slam dunk champ.
three of them.
Right, that's what I'm saying. So
Yeah.
you've got that going for you already. So people know who you are. Maybe they don't watch any basketball all season, but they're going to watch NBA All Star Saturday night.
He's blocked Yao. He's blocked Shaq. He dunked on LeBron. Or no, he blocked LeBron. He's got a lot of Nate's got a lot.
Now, see, those are the things that analytics can't. You can't find those in analytics. That's all heart and competitive spirit and desire. He had that.
And analytics are always going to dislike him anyway, just because his height. And he could be he could be a really good player. He could be the best 6-man in the league because he kind of had a 6-man game. That was kind of his game.
There you go.
Was come in and light it up a little bit.
Be an energy guy, pick up, defend, and disrupt offenses, but yet, create shots for your teammates, get into the paint, dunk on somebody, ignite the crowd, infuse that energy. Exactly.
But so you coached him, right? Like you were coaching.
Yeah, he came in right after I left.
Okay, so would he be? You're still, I guess, qualified to answer this question because he was so good as an NBA player. Is he kind of given more free reign, or is it kind of like you're going to meld into our system? And
no, the coach is going to adjust around him and his skill sets. So let's say you bring in a wing, then maybe you need to deviate your offense to fit that style. Because if a coach is not smart enough to do that, he probably doesn't belong coaching at that level anyway. But when a Nate Robinson comes in, you let him, control tempo, control pace, penetrate pitch. Let him do what he does. Let him showcase it and let him have fun. Put that passion back in his game.
you watch much Big Three ball, or you've seen any Big Three?
I do what, especially I had Charles Oakley as a guest on my show. So to have him, know that he's coaching. Yeah, I see these guys still getting out there. They're providing opportunities for him. I love how Ice Cube has marketed it. I wish the NBA would get behind it and support it a little bit more. I heard that Jaylen Brown has a little bit here recently, which I think is great, but it allows former players to coach. It allows former players to broadcast. It allows former players, to still get out there and play and compete. We just hope that they don't have injuries like Mike James did a couple years ago.
Yeah, Josh Smith had one a couple years ago. Was pretty.
Yeah, that's right.
was pretty nasty. Josh Smith had one, and then Barbosa had the quickest Achilles tear recovery in world history, seemingly.
Oh,
The the actually, it's kind of weird because they're in this transition period where they're introducing younger, more unknown guys. But it's weird because some of the appeal was okay. I want to see Allen Iverson and Birdman, you know.
there you go.
But then some of it's like, well, the basketball quality is going to be higher when you bring in some guys who are 27 as opposed to some guys who are 50. It's
There
just
you go.
unless they're
Right.
at least they're Contino Mobley, and then he just won't age. The the but the
Well, think about it. I mean, you got Julia Servian out there. You got Michael Cooper. You got Lisa Leslie. You've got big name, got Rick Barry's out there. When you've got that kind of knowledge around, man, it's going to be fun.
it is funny and all those legendary names and Nick Young, which nothing take away nothing from Nick Young, but he's not Gary Payton. uh
Yeah,
and it's funny that his team, he takes over for Gilbert Arenas and they win seven, but they win like 6 out of 7 and win the championship.
there you go. There you
Yeah.
go.
Yeah.
The game lives on, baby.
Yeah. Which by the way, watching Jordan Crawford in a situation where he can pretty much one-on-one all game is so
It makes you appreciate the skill set that he had at such a high level for so long.
yeah, what most of those guys, and you could tell like it's weird to watch Reggie Evans, for example, have like step back threes in this game. That's very uncomfortable to watch, and then he hit them. That's just like when'd you decide to add this to your
Because you can't jump as high anymore. You got to do something to create the space.
Reggie Evans? That's his rebound numbers are some of the most absurd rebound numbers I've ever seen. Be like 20 minutes, 15 boards.
There you go.
It's which I guess that means you're efficient in your time played. So I guess has there been a player on any of your teams where I don't want to say it's very isocentric, but it's very much like this is the best player in this team, feed the ball to him, and then whoever I guess that would be, who was it?
Well, of course, any smart coach is going to make sure the ball is in the hands of your superstar,
Yeah.
but yet, it's going to be team oriented. And what was always really successful for us is when that highest level player and best player on your team was unselfish, a la Steph Curry. Because when you get ball movement and you get the local players and you get everybody else involved, it just made the job easier for them when it was time to take over in the last 4 minutes of the game. So when you have that high level guy who's a good character guy, who's unselfish, your team's going to be much more productive.
The So I guess what was your and I started off by asking what was your favorite part, but I guess what was your favorite place you got to, reside in temporarily for?
As far as beauty, Sweden was gorgeous. It felt like I was living in a national park. As far as competitive, I loved Lebanon, because when I think about Lebanon, which is going to come out in the book that I'm putting out, you had a reigning 7-time champion that was Christian based. My team was Muslim based. The president of the country backed the championship team. The prime minister of the country backed our team. So when you took sport, religion, and politics and mixed that all up,
Ooh,
it was a thing of beauty. And you had the army with green Uzis or green berets with their Uzis as your security. That was intense. I mean, you're right on the Mediterranean. It was kind of like Cameron Indoor, but yet it was packed. Everybody was loud, and yet you would have 4,000 people outside the arena right along the Mediterranean watching the game on the big screen. And when you won a championship, you were bounced around on shoulders like a beach ball for 3.5 hours, and it was beautiful. It was the closest thing to Indiana that I ever found coaching overseas, because they were so passionate. Usually soccer is the number one sport in Europe or the Middle East, but basketball by far was the top sport in Beirut, Lebanon. Even though you always heard about how unsafe it may have been, it was a beautiful country. I loved the fans. They had great media exposure. Multiple magazines covered you. You had great newspaper coverage, and you also had national and international TV broadcast of your games, which to me was a lot of fun. And at that time, Lebanon was in the top 16 in the world with their championship team, national team, and the world championships.
the So I ask a question. This is a hypothetical. Say if you're in Sweden and just say, and he wasn't because he was in the league, but say Jonas Jerebko played there, what would the atmosphere be like?
You know what? They love their local talent. Think of a Lauri Markkanen in
Yeah.
Finland, where my son plays in Finland right now. Well, I actually coached one of the top Finnish players from that national team when I coached in Sweden, and we went over and hung out with him, and he was a teammate to Lauri Markkanen's dad. So again, it's generational and it's just wonderful. But yet, man, some of those guys will prefer. Think of an Oscar Schmidt who played his
Yeah.
entire career in Brazil, who was FIBA's all-time and world championships leading scorer and Olympic leading scorer. So I think of guys like that who did it, who even had NBA offers. So I've got a lot of respect for those guys that have that national pride and love and passion for their country.
I guess no, this might be my final question. I'm sure we could do a part two, because there's a lot of meat on the bone. But do you think there's a leagues are more accepting of international guys now?
Oh,
Yeah.
100%. I mean, look how many NBA rosters have European or South American talent or Asian talent on their rosters right now. It's at an all-time high, and they're coming over taking part in the G League, which is
Yeah.
preparing them, to get up. So again, those are whole other conversations that we could delve into. That's a lot of fun. But again, look what Saudi Arabia is doing with golf, and they're starting to do it with soccer. Don't be surprised if Saudi Arabia doesn't throw their hat in the ring in basketball in the near future.
Well, and for a while it used to be you'd have a guy from India or Iran, and they'd be 7-5 or they'd be 7-4, and they'd get 50 games in 5 years or so, and they'd just be on a roster because. And now you're not really seeing that. You're seeing like guys like Bruno Fernando coming out of Angola, and he's got a kind of a more well-rounded game,
Yeah.
and he's sticking around. Or no, very few 7-5 people have ever had a well-rounded game. So Fernando in comparison has a significantly more well-rounded game, and you're seeing guys. I think I did a thing. I think it was 18 different countries were representing the playoffs this year. So I mean, it's like you got a lot more international flavor, and I think now you just have more of a diversity of the nationalities and also the positions. Because before it used to be a bunch of bigs,
Yeah.
it would just be what 7-2 guy did Mexico produce this week?
Right. And that's and Donnie Nelson Jr., who was with the Dallas Mavericks, actually helped send me over to China when I coached there for 3 years. And that was when Wang Zhizhi and
Yeah,
Yao Ming and that whole group was coming, Minke Batir. So I mean that's how the league was played at that time. Yeah. So now you're looking for more versatility, with more of a diverse portfolio to bring in as an asset.
and and now just quite frankly, you just don't see as many guys who are 7 foot 7-1. A
Yeah.
real 7 foot 7-1 at 260 roaming around the league. They just don't exist
Right.
anymore. Those types of
Now,
guys.
now, now it's 7'5", 190 who can step out Yamba. So
Uh,
again, there's those unicorns like the jersey you have over your
yeah,
shoulder there with Porzingis.
you got the true unicorn and got Sabonis, who's more of a throwback than Porzingis is.
There
Sabonis
you
is
go.
even though Sabonis has a lot of Joker qualities, there's not quite the same.
Right.
Yeah. Well, that's all I got, Coach. Here, what do you got, Coach?
I just really enjoyed spending time with you. Thank you for reaching out, and I've had a lot of fun with this conversation, and hopefully we can carry it into future broadcasts.
Okay. Well, I'm Hunter Way at the Athletes Lounge podcast, and that's all I got. Hey guys, this is Hunter Way at the Athletes Lounge podcast. Please like, share, and subscribe where you can. Thanks.